Hi everyone, I am Priscilla and this is my story. For as long as I can remember, I seeked validation, happiness, and to be needed through relationships, friendships, jobs, party life, in sports, education, my parents, and a relationship that broke me and left me with an amazing, handsome son. I remember everything led to me being more lost, more depressed, more scared, and even more alone. Going through a healing journey in 2020 wasn't easy, but it led me to know our Savior, Jesus Christ. I hope you are inspired and enjoy the rest of this video. So many times growing up, I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. God was always with me. He has kept trying and trying to pull me in. To anyone who knows me personally or knows me through social media who thinks that I have it all together, that is far from the truth. I have definitely come a long way from where I was, and I thank God for where I am today, even though it's still not the place where I want to be. But my intention is to grow my faith with God, is to grow as a person, and to show you guys that no matter what I've gone through with this world, with temptation, with desire, with me wanting validation, through my parents, through others, through relationships, with even having insecurities with my body and seeking validation through Instagram, and that is just such a highlight reel, and things that are fake and not true, and things that just make you more empty. Like, this world will continue to make you more empty and cannot satisfy your needs as much as the Holy Spirit and God. Okay, I promise you guys that there was nothing better than that. For the past 3 years, I have been wanting to make a testimony video, but I soon realized that there is never really a perfect time, because your testimony never ends, and as long as your life continues, your testimony grows. And so, full disclosure, I am nowhere near perfect. I just want to share you guys my testimony in the hopes that even just one person is inspired, finds Jesus, and is saved. Making this video has been on my heart for a while, like I was saying, for 3 years almost. But just things happened in my life, and I also felt very vulnerable. And I know that when it comes to being vulnerable, that means you're either seeking attention or validation, and it's a sign of weakness in a sense. But last year, around this time, 2020, I learned that being vulnerable allows us to share things, to experience new adventures or avenues of thought or life. And what perfect way to start the new year, as well as I am in a new chapter of my life. And I just want to thank God for life. I want to thank God for everything that I've gone through. I know that everything happens for a reason. I also want to say that if you are in a current situation and if you find this video, I hope that you are inspired. I hope that this builds your faith, and know that the best is yet to come. Sometimes we have to suffer, and nowhere in the Bible God never says that we don't suffer. Suffering allows us to grow our faith and build us, and our world is further from the truth. Okay guys, so I don't know how long this video is going to be. Get your water and get you a snack. Let me just drink this water real quick. Let me just start off with an introduction of who I am currently. So my name is Priscilla. I am a recent graduate from CSULB. I am a mom to a 2.5-year-old boy, and I love him to pieces, and I thank God for him every single day. He has brought me so much in this world. He has made me appreciate life more, and again, I just thank God so much for him. He is an amazing little boy. But I just moved in to a house with my siblings, and this right here is all God. I am currently in my closet. I don't know if it looks like a closet. I kind of tried putting out my little candle for you guys and be behind the window, but I am in a walk-in closet right now. But again, this was all God. Just recently we moved out from an apartment. It's a 2-bedroom 2-bath apartment, and it was not in the best shape. It was built in the 1980s or 70s or something like that, but none of the appliances or just the overall space was not either kept up, or they just didn't fix it up each time a new renter came or person who came to rent the house or apartment. I just thank God for even living at that apartment. He showed me so much to be grateful in hard times, and guys, God is just so good. And so that is a little bit about my current situation. Now I'm going to just pretty much talk about where I came from. My mom is Filipino and my dad is also Filipino. I was brought up into a diverse family. When I was born, I already had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My 2 eldest siblings, a boy and a girl, they have 1 dad. The middle siblings, a boy and a girl, also have another dad, and then there's my dad. So growing up, we knew Christ and we were considered Christians, but we were never ever consistent with going to church. We would go to church like for a good amount of time, and then eventually we stopped. For reasons, my mom had problems and we just stopped going to church. She stopped going, so we all stopped going. And so I didn't really ever have an encounter with God. I just knew of God. I knew that we had to pray for our food and be thankful for everything we had. And I knew a few stories in the Bible, Noah's Ark, pretty much all of the things you learn in Bible study or in Sunday class. My family was very dysfunctional, and before I used to blame my family or my parents, but they didn't know any better, and I am just so grateful that I have gone through it because of my family now, my son and I. So I am a single mom. I think I forgot to mention that. So my dad and mom, they never really had a connection or a relationship that I ever saw. I never saw them sleep in the bed together, and I just never knew what a healthy relationship was growing up. So it was very dysfunctional. I was never really nurtured like that. That was a problem. I seek that. I seek that attention, which I will get onto later. But by the time I was in 8th grade, or going to start 8th grade, so the summer before 8th grade, I was visiting my oldest sister, which I always did, I think, from the time of 5th grade. And that was just something I did, and it was just to kind of relieve my mom and spend time with my niece and my nephews. The reason being I did this too was so my mom can kind of work more, because my mom and dad ended up splitting up, and then something happened to my dad, which I will not mention, but he became out of the picture, and so my mom became just a single mom. And so when this occurred, my second sister, like the middle sister, she became pregnant and had a baby. And so also the reason why I went with my older sister was so you know, there wasn't so much commotion in the summertime because I was out of school. But I always grew up doing that, and that was normal. I also grew up in a household where my mom became a hoarder, and I think she always had this tendency, but I want to say that this is a disease that is very uncontrollable, and it happens from either growing your childhood or just traumatic experiences that occur over time and you aren't healed from it. But again, another lesson or thought, another lesson or chapter that I went through. Going to my sister's this summer was different because I became in foster care through Kinship. So somewhere in the mix, it got reported that my mom was, or my house was unsafe. And so eventually I just started living with my sister and started going to school out there. At the time, I really didn't understand why this was happening. Yeah, I knew that my mom's house was cluttered and it was a mess and ABCD. But as a child, growing up this age, I was already going through a change in my life where I started liking boys, where I started getting feelings, and just at a stage where I wanted to experience other things other than being a child, I guess. So I was just so confused when this happened. And when this occurred, I was very depressed. I became so alone, and all of these different feelings of confusion occurred. And no one really explained to me that these feelings or emotions were going to happen, or no one ever told me about these feelings. And growing up again, I never really expressed my feelings because growing up, my parents never really asked how I was doing. They never really explained different types of feelings of anxiety, of being overwhelmed, frustration, stress, none of that. So I didn't know how to deal with it when I became in kinship with my sister. And so I would just bottle this up because I was afraid, I was scared to ever just bring this up. And when I was younger, when I had made a mistake, I would get consequences. My mom would spank us and things like that. We were never really bruised like that, but getting spanked is not, you know, a good feeling. But this occurred, and I'm gonna get to a point here. I know I'm talking a little bit about this time. So my older sister, she actually, her family, her husband, which is my brother-in-law, God is at the center of the relationship at this time. And I'm so blessed that my sister found her husband, my brother-in-law, because he brought her to Christ. And their family is just, God has been so amazing in their family. And the reason being is because he is at the center of their life. No matter what situation, it's always putting God first. And I'm a firm believer that if God is at the center of your life, your family will be okay. Your purpose will be fulfilled. Your goals will be fulfilled. And you can help inspire others, and so on and so forth. There's just so many things on the list when God is at the center of your life. So I was going to church with them again. I started going back to church because they would go to church every Sunday. And I was spending my summer with them and then on to my 8th grade year. I want to rewind a little bit. So every time I would go with my sister in the summers, we would go to church every Sunday. But I didn't really, I don't know, pay attention or whatever. This experience was different. I had my first revelation with God, and this encounter with him was beautiful. I don't remember exactly what happened word for word or what the pastor was preaching, but all I know is that God was speaking through him for me. And I know there were probably other people, but the past few months I felt so alone. I felt so sad, and I didn't understand these feelings. But when this encounter happened, that's all I wanted. That's the only thing that I knew of at that time, and I wanted more of it. And so after the sermon, they did a worship, and again, God was speaking through those singers to me, and I wanted more of that. And then time goes on, and after this encounter again, I fall back into the same place, being so depressed, not knowing who to talk to, being in fear if I talked to anybody about this situation because it was new. And I heard, or I've always known at that time, that being in foster care is for children who, at the time, I knew that it was for children who were abused, who were neglected and not taken care of. And I didn't know that this was a form of neglect, and it is. So again, I fell into that state of mind where I didn't know who to talk to. And so I ended up going back home, because we all tend to go back home where something is familiar. But this time, I didn't actually go back home. I just went back to the city where I grew up at, which is Bellflower, which is a small little town. You may or may not know of it. But I came back home, and I didn't go back home. I went back to a room my mom rented out of this house, which I learned how to be more alone and feel more sad and be more depressed, and didn't know how to express my feelings. And this time I just wanted to be validated. I wanted attention, and I wasn't getting that from my parents, and still my dad wasn't in the picture at the time. So I seek that through guys, and then I learned that with guys, gosh, like, they are so mean, they are so evil. And eventually in 9th grade, I met this person who, she was amazing, okay? I definitely learned a lot. And yes, you might be thinking, she's Christian and she dated a girl. At the time, you guys, I was going through it, okay? Please don't judge me. I know how it sounds, but I just really liked the attention and the affection that I got from this person, of my needs being fulfilled. And maybe eventually I'll talk about my love language, but I never got the nurturing from my parents. I never got the attention. I never got what I needed at home, so I seeked it somewhere else. Eventually that relationship ended, and I learned a lot. And then again, in my junior year, I met somebody, and let me backtrack a little bit. My first time experience with sexual intercourse was with that girl I dated my 9th grade year. And I know you guys might think, like, wow, she's so young, but I don't know what I was thinking, what I was doing. I just wanted to be loved, you guys. And that is what my flesh desired. And so that had happened. But flash forward to my next relationship, it was with the guy, and word got around that I did date a girl, and I was not ashamed of it, to be completely honest. People talked, and for some reason I didn't care. It did get to me a little bit, but at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, so I dated this guy my junior year up to my senior year. We also, maybe the next few months, we had sexual intercourse, which I desired. I knew what was wrong because I grew up learning or knowing that I needed to be abstinent. And so, like I was saying, my past relationship with God wasn't steady, but I knew of God. So at this time, I didn't really consider that it was bad, but I still did it anyways. And I wasn't aware of the actual action I was putting into the world. That relationship ended, And it kind of ended on a bad note because of the attention I thought I needed from this person. And this person couldn't give it to me because the attention I really needed was from my parents, and I didn't get that. Anyway, during that time of that relationship, I started living with my dad. And again, I wasn't getting my needs met through my parents. And so I sought it elsewhere. And also during this time, I think I felt more alone, and this relationship really was a big lesson. I fell into self-harm more, and also my mom, she was at that point where she just wanted to give up on her kids, because we weren't reckless, but we just weren't getting our needs met, and so we sought it elsewhere. Okay, so that was our situation. And then when I started living with my dad, I just felt even more alone. So my dad actually, he started being my life again in 10th grade. And I've always been in the middle of my parents, my childhood. I would always have to ask my dad for money for my mom, for the bills, for whatever what she needed the money for. She was a stay-at-home mom. And then when they had split up, she wanted money for child support, and I was always between that. So that also developed my depression, because I didn't feel needed. Like, financially, the only reason why my mom would really talk to me was to talk to my dad. So I was always alone. Even now, I feel like I'm always alone, but now I enjoy my alone time. I like being alone. I love spending time with me and taking care of me, and spending time with God and in the presence of God, listening to Christian music, Christian contemporary music, and Russ. I listen to Russ. I know he is, I know he says bad words and things, but he really inspires me career-wise. But that's besides the point. So my mom, my senior year, ended up moving to Washington. She ended up meeting someone, and this is why I live with my dad, because my mom traveled out of the state. I don't know exactly where, because she traveled a few times without us. So she ended up meeting someone, and then senior year, she bounced before I even turned 18. And this time I was devastated. You guys, I always felt like I needed my mom. Like, she was my best friend. And then I had separation anxiety. That was very traumatic for me. Maybe one of the most traumatic things up until then, okay? I've had another traumatic experience which I didn't talk about. But anyway, so she moved, and then it was my senior year, and so I experienced marijuana. I experienced meeting this person who had a girlfriend, and it was a very traumatic experience with that person. Anyways, maybe I'll make another video on that. I also, again, wanted validation from somebody, and then I got it from this girl who really was interested in me, and I liked that feeling. It wasn't necessarily me being attracted to girls. It was more of being attracted to the feeling of being needed or wanted. And in my life at the time, I didn't feel needed at my house. I didn't feel needed by my parents. I didn't feel needed by my siblings. They were all going through things as it was growing up in this family. And I am not saying that I'm the only person who goes through things. I don't want to make that seem that I am the only person in this world hurting. I know, I understand that there are worse things in this world, but this was my world, okay? But anyway, so that broke me. I got into drugs, of marijuana, and just doing edibles and things like that. And the first time I did an edible, my mom actually came back from Washington to visit. And this is when I did not know what to do. I was in a state of, I was just living in this world as my, I was just living in this world doing worldly things, and in reality I needed Christ. I needed him. And every single time God would reach out and say, you are my daughter, you are enough, you are beautiful, you are deserving, only I can give you what you want. And I didn't know this until I lost my nephew. So I lost my nephew in 2016. At the time, he was 3 years old. And this is when I know that we were tested. Not necessarily tested by God, in a sense that we were tested by God's gift, that He can give us something so amazing and it can be taken in an instant. And I just remember asking God, why my nephew? I was so close to my nephew, and I just can't imagine what my brother and sister-in-law were going through. And I can't ever imagine that. But I know it was hard. If it was hard for me, I can't imagine the pain that they continually go through. But again, God gives us amazing things. God, my faith was tested during this time, but not only did our family get closer with this traumatic experience, but my relationship with God became closer. I then realized that there's a God who loves us. Although something so precious and beautiful got taken, my faith grew in God. And I can't speak for my siblings or for anyone who has also lost my nephew, but for me personally, this is when my faith grew. So I started going to the church that my sister-in-law was going to. So my sister-in-law is the same sister-in-law who brought me to my church in 9th grade when I had another encounter with God. And I just realized that every time God kept trying to pull me and say, you are my daughter, I love you, everything will be okay as long as you follow me. And then again, I fell off. And then my nephew was the one that hit me so hard. He says, you are my daughter, I love you, come walk with me, you are enough, you are worthy, just trust me, everything will be okay. And maybe there is a deeper reason and meaning behind the loss of my nephew, but for me personally, my reason was to get closer to God, and this was my door. And I am truly blessed that God has impacted me the way He has in this way. So I started going to church, and it started becoming a consistent thing. And in worship, I began having more and more encounters with the presence of the Holy Spirit, and just realizing that I'm not alone. So many times growing up, I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. God was always with me. He has kept trying and trying to pull me into his arms and say, you are my daughter, and I love you, and I forgive you. Tell me all your hurts, all your pain, and I will heal you. So when my nephew did pass away, I was already in a relationship. I got in a relationship with my son's dad the end of my senior year. I actually met him at church, and I thought that he was the one for me. I thought that he's a man of God, and maybe at the time he was, but eventually towards the end of our relationship, I was still going to church consistently, and I remember praying to God saying, if this relationship isn't right for me, then please show me. And we were having sexual intercourse pretty much on a consistent basis, and I knew what was wrong. But I remember getting into this relationship, I told him I wanted to be abstinent, and you know, my flesh just desired it so much. And so obviously we got into this relationship, and my plan was to be abstinent. Eventually it didn't happen. We were in the room alone, and so things went the way it did. And then so flash forward to when I was praying and going to church consistently, he actually stopped going to church. He started working, and the reason being behind of him not going to church is because he was too tired, and he only worked maybe 3 days out of the week, and he did get home late on Saturdays because he worked on Saturday. So for Sunday church, he couldn't make it, and we started church at 10 a.m. So when I started getting closer to God, my relationship with my son's dad began to depreciate and lose its value. And again, I kept continuing to go to church with my dad. Again, I was still living with my dad, still continuing to pray and be in my devotionals and live for God. And then in 2017, we broke up. Things weren't going well. And then I forgot how good God was in my life. And this broke me, you guys. For 2 years, this broke me. From 2017 to the end of 2019. I didn't start doing my healing journey until 2020. But I thank God I did forget that I prayed for him to end things if it wasn't for me. So let me say that, let me talk a little bit about this relationship. Maybe it might be a lot. So we ended up breaking up in October of 2017. And then at the time we were also living together. So he actually moved in a few months after we were together because he had problems with his family, which I won't get into because that's not my story. That's not my business to tell. He lived with me for a year and a half, actually a little over a year and a half. I was gonna say 2 years, but we went out. We dated a little over 2 years. So we ended up breaking up, and then he ended up moving into one of my friends' dad's back house, where it was a garage, but they built it to a studio. And then I was heartbroken, okay, but I wasn't that heartbroken until finding out things. So I knew there was a reason, and God was telling me there was a reason why we needed to break up and why we broke up. That reason is because I ended up finding out that he was talking to somebody. So he was talking to someone 2 months prior to him moving out. And maybe they were friends. Maybe he confided in this person of our problems and we just fell out of love. Or maybe this person showed up in his life and, things just happened. And then our relationship just went on a downfall. And so I found out because God kept telling me, because I was still going to church consistently. God kept telling me, there's a reason why this is happening. You will find out. This time I was in college going to school. And this led me to looking at the phone bill. So he was on the plan with my dad and I, and he was paying. And I know this goes a little bit beyond like privacy, but I had to know, you guys. My gut feeling was telling me that you need to know why. And so I did my research, and then I called a few numbers and nothing came up. And then I go back 2 months and I see this number, and it's like, I knew his schedule at the time with college and work. And this time that he was having these conversations was like during break. And then things just started to add up, like, oh, that's why he didn't, call me during his break. Oh, that's why he would ignore my phone call. Oh, that's why he would say my friend is calling when I would be on the phone with him to talk to that person. Oh, this is why I'm gonna hang out with my coworkers after work. And just so many things led up to it. And then things just so I ended up calling this number. It was a female who answered. I was like, hi. And then she was like, hey. And then I asked, who is this? And then she said, and my heart broke. And I think I just hung up. And then my issue was continuing to do this search. And then I think I looked at his followers and I looked up hi. And then I found the person. Anyways, I was heartbroken. I kept messaging him, calling him, trying to find out who this person was. And then I found out they hung out the day after he moved. So he was logged into my Apple. He was logged into his Apple account on my my computer. And so when you take a picture on iCloud, the photo adds onto your computer. So that's how I found out that this person, it clicked. This person. And guys, I was so heartbroken. Then tell me why I think not even a week goes by, I find out I'm pregnant. Yay for Priscilla. So 1, I'm going through a heartbreak. We just broke up. 2, I find out that he is already talking to somebody and potentially in a relationship or dating when he just moved out. And 3, guys, I'm pregnant. Okay, so I know exactly how I got pregnant. So the last few weeks of our breaking up, him deciding that he's leaving, we were doing crazy stuff. Okay, we were already sexually active. And so this one time, I don't know, it just happened. And then we were like in the moment and decided, okay, I'll just take a plan B. So the next day after that, we have sexual intercourse again. So, plan B works about 72 hours, but obviously it doesn't work as well if you take it right after you've had sexual intercourse. So I didn't take it that day we first were intimate, and then that happened. We took it the next day. So my son is a Plan B baby, and we talked about having an abortion through text, but in my heart, I never ever considered having an abortion with any child. I actually forgot to mention this. I had a miscarriage a year before that. So when my nephew had passed away, again, we had sexual intercourse, and I was supposed to take Plan B, but we kind of said, like, you know, whatever happens, happens. So I ended up becoming pregnant, and then I ended up losing the baby. I went in at 8 weeks and there was no heartbeat, and so they sent me to get another like testing, and then again there was no heartbeat. I had to wait a few weeks to go back to see everything, and then there was still no heartbeat. The baby didn't grow. It was supposed to be, I think I was supposed to be 16 weeks already, but the baby was measuring 8 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that. And that was very hard for me. But anyway, now again, I was pregnant with my son. I would never have an abortion. I am not here to judge anyone. I just hope that you are inspired. But so anyway, back to having or finding out that I'm pregnant. I stopped going to church, I think, after 6 months. So I ended up moving to an apartment with my dad. So I had to sell my house, which my dad lived in a senior mobile home, and me being pregnant, I could not live there. Also, I didn't mention I started taking care of my dad who has Parkinson's at 18. Right when I graduated, I was actually supposed to go out of state. With my dad's condition, I'm his only child, and so I decided to take on this job, which, not job, but this role as a child or young adult. And it was hard. It's still hard till this day, but it has been definitely a lesson that I've been growing through and learning, and just learning how to care for someone other than myself. So I had to move with my dad, and I remember being 4 months pregnant, moving into a whole apartment by myself, doing the whole paperwork with realtors who sold my dad's mobile home, and just having to grow up so quick. I had to grow up so fast, especially because I started taking care of my dad at 18, which I believe no child should go through or have to go through. But I'm thankful that I've gone through it because it makes me a better daughter, and it has taught me to be more understanding with someone with a condition, whether it's an illness or addiction or whatever they go through. And that is something my dad has dealt with, and that is addiction and drug use and alcohol use. And I think that kind of messed up our relationship too growing up. But I don't really want to talk about that just because it's kind of a blur with that situation. But anyway, taking care of my dad and moving and still going to church and growing my faith in God and realizing that I need to push through. Like, there's a reason why. And right now, I'm living the reason. And it's not solely for my son, but that is a huge reason for my son's future, for my future, and for changing people's lives. To let you guys know that no matter what circumstance you are in, the best is yet to come. If you have your faith and you believe in God, I promise you your situation will get better. Your environment will get better. And believing in Jesus does not mean that I am perfect, does not mean that I don't sin, does not mean that I could fall again into this world, into the lies, into deception, into desire, into temptation, and the sin of this world. I am a living proof that you will suffer, and that is okay. We have a God who is greater than us, and this world isn't. There is so much more to this world, and we are just living in it. And I'm here to tell you that amazing things will happen when you have Jesus at the center of your life. I remember just back then when I didn't have God in my life and on a consistent basis, in my mind thinking about him, talking to him, just going on a walk saying, thank you, God, thank you so much. Thank you for putting me in this position. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for all of the encounters I've had with individuals. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God is so good, you guys. And just from all of the dysfunction and things I've gone through, there's so much that I didn't talk about that if I told you every single bits and pieces, we would be here for a whole lifetime. But what I'm getting here is that God found me. Every time I was going through something where I felt alone, he came up out of the tunnel and say that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that is me. You are my daughter. I love you so much, and no matter what, I love you. No matter what, you will always be my daughter. I'm always here for you. You just have to put in the work, trust in me, and know that nothing in this world is better than me. So with that being said, you guys, through it all, I am thankful. I didn't also mention that when my mom was a single mom, she was struggling financially. So I did have my toes both in like a working family experience as well as living low income. And I'm still considered low income, but you guys, God is just so good. And I'm thankful for being in this current situation. I just left an apartment to be in a house with my loving family, and again, the best is yet to come, and I'm still so grateful and thankful for my current circumstance. And I just thank God everything will fall into place, even though that there are some things in my life that aren't in place when it comes to, let's say, insecurity, into finding the man God has for me, in being the best mom that I can be. I know there's still work that I need to go through with God, and to heal with God, and to grow my faith with God. And I know my testimony is going to grow, and maybe I will update you guys. But I think God is going to change lives with this video, and I hope that I can be the voice for you and to let you know that everything will be okay. Sometimes in the midst of it all, it's so hard to believe that everything will be okay, because our world could be crashing and we lose our faith and we blame God. But blaming God is not the answer. And that is just the devil and the enemy trying to bring us down and trying to show us that God isn't real. And he loves that. But God is real, you guys. The devil is real. The enemy is real. And I am not trying to live in a or relationship with God, where one foot is in and the other foot is out. So that is my testimony. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please don't be too harsh in the comments. I love you guys so much, and thank you all for watching. Bye guys.